Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to reach the conclusion of our education series, and I thought I've done, a fair bit of negative critiquing or analysis, I guess. I don't like to think of it as negative critiquing. So I thought let's end on what would a potentially ethical education system look like. And one way I was thinking, not the only way, of course, but one way of pondering this is to go, okay, if you go to a job, the theory is even if you don't really like your job, what do you get in compensation, in this case money, that helps offset the fact that you might be preferring to do other things with your time? And in the case of children particularly, we'll talk about college next, if we think through the K-12 system, what is it that they can get for sure, that's guaranteed, that compensates for the fact that they have to spend a fair amount of time there? And I think the list is pretty good. It's a pretty good list of things you can more or less guarantee if you decide that's what you want to do with education. Again, currently, just to recap a bit, the K through 12 theory is, you have to pay this price now so that in 20 years, 15 years, 12 years, you can get a job that will help pay money, then you'll be good. But notice that's a really long delay. Imagine taking a job that said, hey, if you work hard for the next 15 years, we'll start paying you. Maybe. Maybe not, but maybe. I don't think a lot of people would take that job. I think a lot of people would go, that doesn't seem like a very good deal. And so while I'm not convinced that education isn't going to be entirely great and wonderful and like this, super joyous thing all the time, I certainly think it could be much more heavily emphasized. And the way I was sort of pondering this, having hit on the jobs analogies, to go, okay, if I get a paycheck, I have to pay some taxes. And the idea here is if I pay taxes into a communal fund, then that will be used in a way that makes my experience of my community, my state, my county, my country better, maybe the world even, hopefully, than it would be if I kept all of my money for myself. And so I'm not saying it's unfair. So I think if you think of the unpleasant part of education as a tax, that the young people are paying in hopes that in the future they'll live in a better world for themselves and for others. And then the rest of the education should be what they actually are sort of, again, in this compensation model, what they're guaranteed to get. What should we be trying to guarantee them? What would the wages be of their education? And again, now parents get paid in part because their children are taken care of. And so that's great for the parents, but notice this is not necessarily great for the kids. I mean, it may be good for the kids as well, but this is mostly for the parents and for society as a whole. So that also isn't, not that fair for the kids. So so let's think about this. What can we more or less guarantee that young people can receive as they're there in the care of the state? And the first couple of things that jump out to me is health. We can create an environment where they get lots of exercise and fresh air and an opportunity to be active and express themselves physically. And this is, again, always harken back to the Greeks. This is the foundation of the Greek model of education is, hey, if you're be physically healthy, we're going to exercise a lot. I've said this before. The Platonic dialogues of Socrates they're either going to the gym or they're coming from the gym. This is, over and over again. And, it just comes up all the time. They talk about being at the gym, or we met these people at the gym, or we're going to the gym. And I think it's the Xenophons as well, that they had also had some dialogues that took place at the gym. And so, there's this whole whole literature in the ancient world of health, like the foundation of education is health. And this is for the aristocrats, right? So they're trying to make sure, look, we want to stay healthy and physically active. And they really emphasize, Plutarch talks about this, comes up over and over again. Romans, of course, talk about this a bit. Cicero talks about this. And I think there's no reason that can't be the case, right? Like, why can't we spend a significant amount of the school day having the young people be active? It doesn't have to be always regimented. You can have some organized activities and then you can have some non-organized, recess. So you can have like physical activity and then recess and then some more physical activity. And so the children are not just becoming healthy. They're not just getting the kind of activity and movement that they need to be well. They're also seeing it modeled as a way of life. one of the problems that we have now is school models being sedentary. It tells you that being sedentary, sitting still, being quiet is good. Now, it's not that these things are bad. It's just that the ratio is way, way, way out of whack. I mean, the most dangerous thing in your house is probably your chair or your couch. Humans are evolved to get an extraordinary amount of exercise. It's really good for us to get, 20, 30 hours of exercise a week. Spectacularly good for the human being. And people, we have jobs, you have careers, right? Okay, but let's model, at least in the young people, the idea that, hey, if you get 3 or 4 hours of exercise a day, you're going to feel a lot better your entire life. Just keep doing this. Keep your physical being well. This exercise will also, of course, help psychology immensely. As they say, most or many of the disciplinary problems that you receive are simply people that are hyperactive, ADHD, let's give all the kids Ritalin, or let's see if about 3 or 4 hours of exercise a day doesn't take the edge off of that. And so when you do finally put them inside or put them in a desk and say, hey, let's sit quiet for a while and focus on our reading or our math or whatever it is we want to focus on for the educational, quote unquote educational component here, is, they're going to be like, yes, let's sit down. I may not learn any math. I don't care, right? I may not be interested in math. I've suddenly become very interested in sitting down because I'm kind of tired. I feel like I could use a rest. I need to recover a bit from all of this physical activity and fun that I've been having. And then they're in the right place. So that's one thing I think we could really model. Also, since there are school meals, often breakfast and lunch, again, trying to provide for the children, food, that's a good thing to provide. You can model healthy eating parameters, healthy diets, healthy, examples of what does it look like when you eat well, what, vegetables and whole grains and all these sorts of the foods that are going to nourish you. And so just think of a school that by the time you graduate as a senior in high school, you've spent 12 or 13 years, 5 days a week, eating 2 healthy meals and getting, 15 to 20 hours of exercise a week. I mean, that is going to be, on average, of course, it's going to be outliers. On average, these students are going to be well, right? At a fundamental level, they're going to be healthy. And so that, I think, and you can guarantee that. That's the thing. So you can't guarantee if you study hard and learn calculus, you'll get a job. I can guarantee that if we model an environment of physical health, that you'll be well. And the science here is not confusing. This will make you feel good. You'll feel good. You'll be physically well, and you'll have good habits going forward into the future. You'll be used to this idea of, I just feel better when I get all this exercise. I've been doing this my whole life, and now I'm ready to roll. Think of what we do instead, which is model incredibly unhealthy behavior. Not just model it, by the way, force it. It's enforced. It's a compulsory institution. And then take that compulsory institution, extend it for 15 years, combine it with generally really poor examples of eating, and boom, what do you have? People who have developed many often unhealthy habits, unhealthy eating habits, which now that you've done it for 15 years and you've done it as a child, right, when your most impressionable years, of course this is a pattern you're going to develop that you're going to incorporate into your life, as opposed to incorporating or at least modeling habits that someone can take forward. And again, I don't mean that everybody has to be an athlete and run sprints and do marathons and whatever all day. It's just like, say, hey, let's do some organized activities, your classic kickballs and this kind of thing, and some disorganized recess time where they can play and jump rope or maybe just chat quietly with their friends if that's what they want to do. But they're being active, they're being physical, they're interacting with the world. This is all good. This is all healthy. And so both as in food and in the amount of exercise that you get in a day, you can absolutely model and create habits that you can guarantee will help people as they move forward in life. So that's not a tax. That's something that you know. Now, whether or not they carry that out and continue to do that, hey, that's up to them. But what we currently do, of course, is criminal. And I think I mentioned this before, that there's been lawsuits in Washington state and other states that children are not even getting 30 minutes of recess a day, which means they're being forced to sit in their desks theoretically studying and learning, which of course they aren't because no one can study and learn that much, and being deprived of any sort of independent physical activity or social interaction, which is simply child abuse. I want to put that out there. That's child abuse, and I hope the court cases are successful and the schools are forced to give them more. But 20 minutes, that's ridiculous. 30 minutes? How about 3 hours? Let's just do 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours, broken into some chunks. Everybody's going to be happier. Also note from the school, because this time is basically group activities, it really lifts the burden from teachers and from administrators and removes the burden of classroom space. You could actually rotate it so that you had maybe two cohorts of students, and so their recesses and stuff alternate, which would have the equivalent of doubling the number of classrooms you had. Or, of course, there's no perfect efficiency, but it would certainly allow you to do a dramatic boost. So, you have group recess time where all the kids are out together, but then one group stays out and keeps exercising and doing some more organized exercise activities. And then the other group spreads off into their general classes, and they do their classes. And then those students then take a break and do the outside exercise. And then the other students come back in and, hey, presto, your school is 50, 60, 70% larger magically. And you don't need any more staffing. Maybe even have less staffing. So, yeah, it's a way of you could make smaller class sizes and then have these big group classes and then have this rotation through that. And so students get more individual attention, teachers have a lower workload, students are getting more exercise. It's a win for everybody. Another aspect of this is, teachers need to model. This is one of those, it's just factual. When you're locked in an institution for years, you have your peers, maybe students a little older, students a little younger, and your friends and your peers. You're taking modeling clues from them, and you have the teachers. What are the teachers modeling in their behaviors, their attitude, all of this? I mean, this is an important aspect of education because, again, we are evolutionarily designed to mimic. This is how we learn. We have to watch. I mean, this is why school works at all, is because we're just trained to watch the big ones, right? So what are they doing? I need to do that. And if teachers are modeling unhappiness, stress, sedentariness, a disinterest in the subject material, all of these negative behaviors, why would the students in any way learn to model anything else? I mean, it would be bizarre if they did. Under what circumstances would they, in fact, go, oh, well, the adult around me is doing this, but all of a sudden us fifth graders decided, no, we're going to model a completely different behavior. So they either ignore the adults as much as possible, but when you're locked in a room with them for hours and hours a day, it's hard to ignore them. And so then you just sort of subconsciously begin to incorporate these sorts of behavioral models into your life. And so, again, if you think about the number of models you have over a 15-year period, it would be really great if we could make sure those models were as helpful as possible for the development of young people. And as far as I can tell, this is almost never mentioned, right? You got to have syllabuses and you have to be able to, you have a curriculum, right? Kids do not care about curriculum. Administration cares about curriculum. That's why it exists. You talk about all this stuff. They might have a dress code, right? But this is clearly very, basically institutionally designed. It's not nothing for the children, and all of this. And so the individuals, rather than focusing on, what can I do so that when I step in front of my students, I'm prepared to provide them some sort of model that I at least think is beneficial to, not the subject matter. Who cares about the subject matter? But the person themselves, because that's what's being watched. Now, if you're a person who's interested in your subject matter, then the students will go, that must be an important subject matter because, look, the adult thing in the room seems invested in this. So it increases the likelihood that the students will be invested by a lot. But if you don't seem interested and you don't care, like, so for instance, when teachers are forced to teach a test of some kind and they just obviously think it's terrible and stupid and a waste of time, the students pick up on this instantly, and then they go, well, this is clearly stupid, pointless, and a waste of time because the big thing in the room is telling me that. They may not verbalize that, but in their behavior, their attitudes, their emotional outlook, absolutely. So this notion of modeling. And finally, on that front is the environment. So schools should present an environment that children sort of want to be in, right? That makes them feel good, makes them feel upbeat, makes them feel welcome and pleasant. And this is going to sound unbelievable, but a new and actually quite nice elementary school is built in my community. My community is tiny, so this is a big, we passed the big bond, and lots of parents got behind it, and we, for our community, it's expensive. I mean, it was a fair chunk of money. So it's like, great. When we said, let's do it for the kids, the bond passed by a lot. So we're like, great, here we go. And we needed it. I mean, our other building was truly, basically it's illegal to have kids in it. It was so falling down, and the air conditioning didn't work, and all the decrepit school problems that you have. So they built a new school, a lot of nice features to it. It's sort of 2.5 stories tall, I guess. It's got a sloped roof, so about 2.5 stories tall. Sort of nice facility, and they painted it black, dead black. I thought it was that's the building wrap, and then they're gonna put rainbows and ponies and starfish and oranges and yellows and blue. Black. They painted it black. Who paints a school for elementary school children black? It's just like, what? Why? I mean, what? Black? And I'm sure it looks good in the architectural drawings, and it's an edgy feature if you're on like a tech campus and a corporate campus, and you want to do like some look, we're sort of edgy video game company or something. Yeah, paint your building black. Go for it. Knock yourselves out. I don't care. But it's an elementary school. And by the way, Pacific Northwest, it's not like we need more gray and dark colors, right? We've got those. We're good with those. Let's do some bright. Let's do something upbeat. Let's do something vibrant for the kids. Nope. Painted that, oh man, I won't cuss now. Painted it just dead black. And I'm hoping that eventually they're just going to let the kids do murals all over this thing, and then it'll be great. Let the kids paint it. Let them remake it every year. Every year, every class gets some section of the building that they can do anything they want with, and I think that would be great. That would be awesome, and just make it fun and bright. But let's not do black, okay? Just as a rule of thumb, can we avoid the black? But also in the classrooms, are they inviting? Do the students feel like they're welcome? Is it warm and comfortable? And both in the environmental sense, but more importantly, I think have a cold room. Hey, if you can't afford heat, don't heat the damn building, but then put a bunch of blankets and warm chairs, and we'll all sit in a circle. And I bet students would be happier than a warm room that's very dead and dull and boring. And you see, by the way, I think this is when you see good teachers. You can see teachers, struggling with it. They're trying to make their rooms vibrant. They're trying to bring life to them. They're trying to be themselves upbeat and interact with the students in different ways. But it's definitely an uphill battle, and it's one of the reasons that, I think a lot of teachers burn out, is because this is not what the core of the institution is driving at. So if you implement systems that put these at the center, then now what we've got is a vibrant, inviting environment where students are going to get a lot of exercise and eat some decent food, and they're going to have adults who model for them interest in learning and healthy lifestyle. Boom. Right? Do that for 15 years. I see no downside. Let's say they're all illiterate, that they do not learn those, which is of course silly. But it's probably better to have a moderately illiterate population that's really healthy and vibrant, upbeat, and feels good and has good habits than what we're doing. I would say that might be a reasonable trade-off. But that's not a trade-off that's necessary. Another aspect of this, and this goes back to what I talk about with parent involvement in extracurricular activities, is make as much of the school day elective as possible. Because people like choice. And if I get to choose the activities I'm doing, and I choose activities that I like at least part of every day, wow, I probably go to school like, oh, I can't wait to go to school. Maybe I don't like all the exercise in the morning, but okay, I know we got to do that. But then I get to paint. They've got the painting thing, and on recess I can go in there and just paint, and man, I love that more than anything. They got the music room. I can go with my friends, and we can make music, and we're forming a band. And if you have the opportunity for an hour or two every day to do activities that you're self-directed, that you get excited about, you want to go to school. It's a healthy environment. It's a welcome environment. It's vibrant, and I want to go. I want to go do theater. I want to go practice for the basketball team. I want to go pain. I want to do like woo. So now I'm happy. Now I'm good. And I'm like, oh, maybe I like the recess. That's fun with my friends. I like the exercise. Okay, I kind of do that if I have to. But then I know I'm going to get to do, an hour or of this, or an hour and a half or 2 hours of that. Or maybe it's two different subjects. And so now 3/4 of my day is either really healthy for me and models good behaviors and makes me feel good, and or I'm really excited and enthusiastic about it because I chose it. So now pay the tax, even though then I still don't think it has to be presented as a tax. But by the way, the Common Core, which was the standardization of education program pushed primarily by the Gates Foundation, always upsets me. I think it's roughly the distilled essence of an evil concept for education. But the people who came up with this is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I guess, I don't know, now they're separated, they're divorced, so maybe it's the former Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But both of them had private liberal arts educations, and they went to schools that gave them a huge amount of choice about the kinds of subjects they studied and what they pursued and how they structured their day. And there's nothing in the Common Core program, either in its concept, in its details, or anything, that emphasizes the kind of education that the people who are promoting the program actually got, which is just still baffles me. Why don't they say, hey, let's at least try to give everybody the equivalent of these really, liberal arts private school experiences? Wouldn't that be great? It was good for us. This is what we had. It seemed to work. Why don't we give more? The reason, again, Bill Gates was able to do computers was because this was like a free time experiment, sort of lab thing that they had at his liberal arts, high school, so that he's like, oh, he could go in and mess with computers, because they basically had a class that said, hey, go mess with computers. They said, if that's what you're interested in, you can do this. And boy, he's off and running. There he goes. He's loving this. Now he has a reason to go to school. He's excited. He's intellectually interested. I mean, okay, great. I love that model. How about for everybody? Why can't all the other kids do this too? So, that sort of model of giving them the opportunity for electives and self-direction. And again, so then you get to the part that's sort of necessary. Well, what really helps students learn? And if we, so there's the reading and writing part. And what really helps students learn to read and write is reading and writing. So have periods of every week where students are allowed to read quietly by themselves, and probably much more importantly, where adults read to them. So if 2 or 3 or 4 hours a week, you have one, block where you just read books to young people. This turns out to be one of the, again, this is the research. You can look at the research. The young people whose parents read to them at home, on average, do better. Now, of course, is this a correlation with you're more likely to read to your students if you're wealthier and better educated or not? It's hard to disambiguate. Again, social sciences, they're rough for this reason, but that looks pretty convincing that at least there is a strong correlation, and you can imagine why it might be causal, although that's really hard to prove. But hey, let's run the experiment. Let's just so they're going to read, and what this means is you get used to hearing, right? You get used to that narrative. You get used to the language. You get how sentences are constructed. You're just used to it because you're hearing it all the time. You're continually immersed in it. And then also give them time to read on their own. So if you're being read to a couple hours a week and you're reading on your own a couple hours a week, wow, you're off to a good start. And then writing. So take a couple hours every week to have the students sit and write. Here's a model sentences. Let's write some sentences. Here's some more model sentences. Let's write some sentences. Not that fun, generally speaking, but if you want to learn to write, this is how you learn to write. To wit, by the way, they should not exist multiple choice tests, because every time you take a multiple choice test, you're taking time that you could be writing away from the students. But if every test you take is a written test, then you write a lot more because you just have to. So instead of taking a 20 bubble test on American history, because that was what you say we're reading if you're doing history, then you just say, no, we're not doing a 20 bubble test. We're going to ask you some questions. You either have to write a sentence or a paragraph, or maybe a short essay, a half-page essay. And If you think of every time you've ever filled in a blank or bubbled a bubble, if you were spending that time writing something, you know what? By the time you reach the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, you've written a lot. And writing, like every other skill, practice really helps. Doesn't necessarily going to make you a perfect writer, but it's a lot better than not writing. And you get all these studies and everybody says, oh, students don't know how to write, their writing is poor, et cetera, et cetera. Well, right, sure. How much writing are they doing? Not much. Why aren't they doing writing? Because every chance they get, the administration and the teachers give them something that's multiple choice or fill in the blank, or good Lord on a computer. And so they don't, so why would they write? But what would the point be of that? And then all of a sudden somebody says, oh, they don't know how to write an essay. It's like, well, sure, they don't know how to write an essay because they haven't written. In fact, in my classes before, I would ask students when they came into elementary composition, how many of you have written less than 20 pages of graded writing so far in your educational career? And usually about 3/4 of the hands would go up, which means they've gone all the way to college and only ever written 1 or 2 couple of page essays that were graded. And, so if you've only done 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 pages of writing in your life, yeah, you're probably not going to be very good at writing. This is not, you've never done it or done very little of it, so you're not good at it. The first couple of times you bounce a basketball, you're not good at it. It's just the first time you try and play the violin, it's an evil experience. So those sorts of, just incorporate this. It doesn't have to be difficult or challenging. Just do it, and do it a little bit every day or every other day, in the context of an environment where students are relaxed and relatively happy, and so they don't see it as this onerous. It's not the 150th nasty thing they've had to do the day. It's like, oh, okay, I got to learn to write. We'll do some sentences. We'll do some paragraphs. Same thing with math, right? Maybe do math alternate days. Have reading and writing one day, math and sciences, reading, writing, math and science, reading, writing, and then the reading part of the course of the school year or whatever could be the other subjects. Like it could be history, it could be whatever else you want students to learn. And so this all happens very easily and very naturally. And then no homework. Or if you're going to give homework, you need to give homework like, hey, read the Iliad, read the Odyssey. There you go. Knock yourselves out. Just, we'll check in every once in a while. Something like this, something that is, bigger, long, has a long arc that they don't have to do every day, but they can do when they want. And just free them up from this whole burden of like, oh, I leave school and I still have all this work to do. Because now they have a break from school. And then they can do, again, more of what they want. They have more free time. And so then they go, oh, I've had this break, and now I feel better. So, if you've ever worked a, regular week-long job, often, this is not invariably true, but I've talked to lots of people, they say by Friday, you are just ready to kill yourself and you want to leave. And so everybody leaves early and they do all this stuff. And then you have the weekend, and they said often by Monday morning, you're like, yeah, Monday morning has a bad reputation. But they say, basically, I'm okay. I don't hate my work. I'm ready to go, right? I've had a break. Let's go back to work. I'm ready to get back at it. It's like, yeah, give students the same thing. Give them a break. And so that then they get up in the morning, they're like, okay, yeah, I had a break. I, did whatever I wanted to do, had some fun with my friends. And yeah, now I'm ready to go back to this inviting place that has a nice environment and where, I can do things that I want to do. I have electives that I can pursue, and I get a lot of exercise, and I eat decent food. And now I learned some math. Very straightforward system. And then at the end of the K-12 system, you've modeled good behavior. They've got a healthy amount of exercise. They've learned to read. They've been exposed to literature. They've got some math background. We're doing good things here, right? The students, they've written a lot more than they're writing now. The burden on the teachers and the administration goes way down. And then you go to college. But notice, in fact, the interesting thing about college is this is sort of how college is structured. If you're in a semester system, you have 4 or 5 classes. And if they're, so you're in class a few hours a day, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. 5 would be a lot, but maybe 3. In the quarter system that I was on for years, you have usually have 3 classes, and that meet for 5 hours a week, sort of an hour a week per quarter. And so you're in class on average, what is that, 3 hours a day. Of course, you're not, usually not broken up that perfectly, but, so you're on average, you can expect to be in class about 3 hours a day. These are adults. Why expect them to be in class more than that? And they often have, and when I advise students, I always say, hey, if you can, try and pick one class a quarter that you're excited about. You might have to do these other classes that you're worried about, but one class that's really interesting to you. So that as you're doing your work and you're going through, you go, oh, at least I'm going to get to do this. Or, I've always wanted to take that. Now I'm going to get to learn about that. And so it'll keep your enthusiasm up for the whole process. But if you actually look at the way college is structured, and you get a lot more homework in college, of course, but the in-classroom time is more focused and more limited, weirdly, than elementary school. So we expect college students to be in class for a much shorter amount of time and to be focused for less time than we expect, 12-year-olds, which is, of course, it's functionally insane, right? We know this is just silly. It's not good for anybody, and teachers don't like it because they have to pretend like the students are learning, and the students don't like it because they're stuck there trying to pretend like they're learning, and it's just a big sort of pantomime. So that sort of model. But now when you get to college, you have all the tensions that I spoke about and the career notion. And it's interesting to me, again, because the whole career idea, because what people do is they switch careers all the time. And so getting skills that allow you to have opportunity in areas that you're interested in makes complete and total sense. 100% makes sense. This is sort of maybe one way to conceptualize this, to have opportunities to do the kinds of things you're interested in. But for instance, like half of STEM majors never go into STEM fields. Even like people who get like computer engineering degrees, they just, for whatever reason, they either get interested in something else, they go into some other field. And more or less, it turns out that there's broad areas of applicability. And what higher education really does is expose you to all kinds of ideas, give you some high-level skills if you pursue those sorts of programs, and then you can start looking around and say, well, how do I take what I've learned and apply it in a world in which I want to have certain kinds of opportunities, feedbacks, and interests? I was just talking to a mechanical engineering student who had been working at, I think, Northrop Grumman. And, theoretically, everything is going great. He's got got the mechanical engineering degree. He's got the, big job with the big contractor. And he's like, oh, this is awful. He says, I didn't study mechanical engineering for 4 years to do this. I want to do something different. And so he is doing something different and more interesting, I think, and more exciting. At least that's what he thinks. And I think that's the important part of it. It's not the career skills. It's not the, you fit into this job that people should be pondering. It's like, what kinds of opportunities do I want? What kinds of areas should I be thinking about that I would like to maybe pursue? And then, working backwards from there. And that, it's not that it's that different, but this is the notion of electives in an educational system. You need your core classes for any sort of particular major. And then you have a bunch of electives around there that you can often take to fill in your interests and sort of create this unique, then probably, depending on what field you go into, aren't going to be a lot of students that took the same exact electives that you did, unless you're in a very prescriptive program. But even then, like, mechanical engineering, there are all the different flavors of engineering, and you usually can say, I want to take more of this mechanical, and I want to sneak in that electrical engineering because I really like that electrical engineering component. Where the electrical engineer over here might be going, I love electrical engineering, but I really want a little more of that mechanical. So I'm going to take one of my electives and, get one of these introductory mechanical engineering programs going. So it's not like you're producing these exact replicas who are just engineer with an E that come out and can do any engineering related thing. It's just silly. So, that model of giving people both specific sort of opportunities to study at a high level, but then to give them freedom to choose is the sort of mix that's developed. It's the hybrid that the U.S. has come up with that makes our higher education system in some ways, model for the world. And it is, students have both the capacity to study specific, but also to mix in these other liberal arts elements of what I want to do, what do I want to do when I get to choose. And part of the reason that higher education is sort of stabilized roughly around that kind of those trade-offs, those are the trade-offs that kind of get negotiated all the time, is students are paying. And when students are paying, they want to have choice. There's like, I'm paying a lot of money, and so I want to have both the opportunities to pursue the fields that I want, but I don't necessarily want you to tell me exactly what I have to do every day. Now, some students like that. Most students are like, yeah, I like a lot of that, but I want to take even extra classes. I'm paying, so I'm going to take, a couple more classes over here, or I want to do, I'm taking art history, but there's a lot of French there, so I want to do some French as well. And when I was in the French class, I got interested in literature, so I might want to take a literature class. And, giving students that kind of opportunity and maintaining that diversity that looks confusing and pointless and inefficient from the outside is really sort of the core of what fits actually weirdly into our economy the best in a world where people change jobs, consistently and continually. Also notice the emphasis that lots of colleges put on the beauty of their campuses. Again, when people are paying, you want to provide them an environment where they want to be as much as you can. And so they tend to also put emphasis into the physical environment, some ways in stupid ways, some ways in great ways. But that's one of those issues that they're like, oh, we want to attract people. Let's make the campus attractive. Hey, K12. Do you want this? You want to attract the students? You want them? Let's make the campuses attractive. And again, drawing that model down. Now, people, we don't have the money. We don't have millions to invest. I don't think it's millions. I think you can do a lot with some paint. You can do a lot with some local artists. You can do a lot with plants. You can do, there's all kinds of things you can do a lot with that don't cost a fortune. Letting the students participate, it'll be attractive to the students if they get to participate in making it, right? Because they're like, again, it's interactive. It involves me. And so just rethinking the model from this fundamental sense of ethically, what can we deliver that is an experience that even if someone never gets a job, the economy goes to hell, no fault on their own, they've done everything right, and they don't get a job, by the way, remarkably enough, this happens periodically, then have they been robbed? And by the way, I've talked to students who have articulated this in exactly that many years. Hey, I spent my entire childhood studying hard, doing my homework, losing sleep, not spending time with my friends, getting A's, went to college, graduated 2009, right? Financial collapse. Not only can't I get a job, like everybody I know who had a job got fired. What's my education for? And then, of course, this is when everybody kicks in the argument of, it broadens your mind and blah, blah, blah. All these, beautiful, which are true, but notice that the education system is not premised on that. It's premised on the other, or at least that's the excuse they give for the way it's structured often. And you go, oh my goodness. But look, this person did everything right. They followed all the rules. They were a good citizen, and they got nothing. They got less than nothing because they got robbed of their childhoods, of course. Well, just reverse that model. I mean, again, the worst thing that can happen if you go, hey, this is a place of joy and exercise and health and good modeling and an interesting environment that you feel happy to be in, is, okay, you graduate into a financial collapse in 2009 or whatever the next financial collapse is, and you go, well, I had a really nice run, right? I've been enjoying myself immensely, and so I guess it's okay that things are looking a little bleakish now, but at least I'm healthy, I feel good, and I have good habits to fall back on. And I've read a bunch of books, and I have a bunch of books read to me, and I have a nice friend group, and all right, well, we'll see what happens. That seems like if you think about it in those sorts of, that's of course grossly oversimplified, but these trade-offs, these negotiations that have to take place, I think that's a better outcome, because you haven't, right? You've done what you're supposed to do, and what have you gotten? What you're supposed to have, which is pleasant days, healthy exercise, excitement, interest, care, love, good modeling, good habits. And then the rest can take care of itself, basically, by the by. It's almost oddly, the subjects themselves it can be presented so easily in this environment and so pleasantly that, I don't see any reason to expect that the educational outcome would be worse. In fact, it'd be sort of a major achievement if it were worse. This is what all the testing tells us. That's not going that well, but we don't change anything. We give more tests, of course, to verify that it's going not well, and then we give more tests to verify that the other test didn't help things go better, and so on and so forth. That sort of switch would just radically change the perception, the involvement of communities. And sort of my dream is that every school everywhere in the country should be perceived by the students as like an oasis. No matter what's going on around my school, if I'm in a bad neighborhood, my family's not good, but I get up every in the morning, I go, well, I get to go to school, and that's going to be spectacular. Right, this is going to be great because I'm going to get to do things, and this does happen. By the way, this is not just a myth. Students have this experience at some schools, and with great teachers, and with particular programs, and let's expand that. Let's make that the beating heart of education, so that the pattern is consistent, and students have this opportunity to choose, to express themselves, to be healthy, and to learn. And then, wow, what could go wrong? And to conclude on this, that is the model, by the way, of the ancient world often, because the only people who were educated were elites. And so if you're an elite and being educated, it's a different model often. I mean, you might have a bad tutor or a mean teacher. This happened too. We have those memoirs. But it was generally not that much of the day. And so then the rest of the time, and also it's weird, if someone might potentially be, an oligarch of your Greek city-state in the future, you have to be sort of treat them differently, right? You can't really piss them off, because in like 5 years, they could just have your head cut off for no reason, right? So it's, the dynamic is different. Not that we should have that dynamic, by the way, but it's just the notion of, we need to make this seem relevant. We need to make the kids feel upbeat. We need to make them vigorous, because these are our leaders. Oddly, we've chosen more of the Spartan model, which is not the model anybody should choose for anything, which is just take the kids and put them into this unbelievably rigorous, oppressive system and grind them through that for no particular reason in the modern world, but this sort of factory system, this sort of, you take them in, you stamp them, they do what you say every day of every hour of every minute. By the way, some of the programs of like the Common Core are programmed to like the minute. Like, okay, 4 minutes of this, now 3 minutes of that. No, I'm not making that up. It's very time and motion factory studies kind of stuff, and it's implementation in some places. But rather like emphasizing expression and choice, and basically, joy and health. I think, make it easier on everybody, be more pleasant. I think we'd have less disciplinary problems, and I actually think it would be cheaper in a lot of ways. So education, conclusion. Let's shoot for health and joy as core drivers, because all the rest of that is an unknown future. And if you're going to pay a little tax, you should get some really big compensation while you're doing that. Thank you very much.